Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Casmon, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. If you are enjoying this show and get some great value for your investing needs, let us hear about it. Leave us some honest feedback with a rating and review. It helps us, but it also helps other listeners find this show for their own investing needs. As real estate investors, we understand that life is cyclical, right? Real estate goes up, it can go down. But the key is making sure you can take advantage of the market no matter where it is in the cycle. That is exactly what Moshe Popack has been able to do throughout his investing career. Today, we sit down with Moshe to talk about investing in distressed assets and how he got started despite being broke, being jobless, and having 3 kids to feed. He talks about his strategies and his mindset that he used to overcome those challenges and ultimately to build a portfolio of over 4,000 units. You don't want to miss today's episode of Multifamily Insights, where we talk to Moshe Popack. When you think you found a great deal, asking the right questions could be the difference in finding a stud or a dud. Listen, we've put together a new guide to help you out. It's called 7 Questions You Must Ask Before Investing in Apartments. Now, in this guide, you're going to learn how to uncover red flags, quickly identify underwriting risk, vet sponsors and team members, and confirm key assumptions. Now, this is a guide that's going to help you be a better investor, whether you're an active investor or you're a passive investor looking to partner with other operators. Asking better questions is the key to identifying great opportunities. So download this free guide. Go to our website, casmoncapital.com/7 questions. That's the number 7 questions. And you can access this free guide today. To make it easy on you, though, we've put a link in our show notes. So you go to show notes, you can click that link and access the guide right now. This guide's going to help you make better investment choices, asking the right questions to build your portfolio. So be sure to download it today. Let's welcome to the show, Moshe Popack.
Great to be here, John. Thank you.
Absolutely. Hey, Moshe, I went over your bio at a very, very high level. Why don't you take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps?
Sure. So again, great to be here. Currently living in Miami, moved from Miami 18 years ago from New York. My wife and I, I had a job in 2007, lost the job 2009. I had 3 kids at the time, no job, and I took my last money and started buying foreclosures. Started buying one apartment, and then kind of rolled that money, put all chips in North Miami on almost a 400 unit complex, which is a little bit wild, put some investors together. From there, 2010, 11, 12, those years, started buying distressed foreclosures as they were coming out of the financial crash. And we had at the peak about 7,000 units. We've sold some. Today we have about 4,000 units. And then we did the same thing on commercial properties. We have about 2 million square feet where landlords didn't want to put in TI and upgrade the buildings. And the same thing, that was in 2015. And then 2019, we started buying assisted living where, again, the capital that was necessary for the, for the properties. And many, that's where I always see in real estate, right? So you find a location, something that looks terrible to the outside eye, but to the investor, the number one thing is the price per pound, what you buy. So you can be in many different areas of real estate, but if you have a slow and steady growth area and you're using some leverage over time, I always think like over a 10-year period of time, eventually, again, if you have by now, we have a completely vertically integrated system. What does that mean? From legal to property management to plumbing, electricians, and we have about 400 employees running each division. And so today, my wife and I, we work together, and our office is in kind of Fort Lauderdale area. And we also raise 11 children. So that's our high level of existence today.
Moshe, I appreciate you sharing that, man. Lots of information there to unpack. First of all, you talked about that time frame during the last economic downturn. You had a job, you lost that job, and you decided to turn to real estate, focusing on kind of distressed assets, foreclosures, and you made a big bet. We're going to come right back to that. You made a big bet, and that bet paid off, and that allowed you to really scale this portfolio and scale this business. Today, you've got 400 employees overseeing a pretty large portfolio, 4,000 units. Used to be 7,000 units or so. You and your wife run the business. And I know you got a lot of other charitable things that you do as well, which we'll talk about. I want to go back to that moment, right? Because this is relevant given the current economic situation where folks are worried about job security. They're worried about losing their job. And you talked about taking all of your chips and making a big investment. What gave you the confidence as a jobless father of three to make this big bet and place all of your money into real estate on these deals?
Well, I think I always use that example. Like Viktor Frankl has a wrote this book called Man's Search for Meaning, and he writes, uh, if you have a deep enough why, how is not even relevant. So for me, look, picture that, right? So it's three kids, no job. I tied up. I just happened to have been that I ran into somebody from Philadelphia, and he said, "Oh, there's this property, but it's available, but I don't really know much about, multifamily at that time, but I know that I need to provide for my family." So, I'm 29 at the time. In the end of the day, it's kind of like rock bottom. It's like when you don't have any other option. And I believe that people should put themselves in that situation because we're naturally comfortable being lazy. We don't want to do things that are hard. Uh, you know, so so my when we tied up the deal, went to the with my wife to the chief of police. He said, "There's shootings here. There's drugs, tough, tough area." And he's like, "You should take your money and run away." But it was too late. I was non-refundable on the deal, and I went to 30 different investors. Remember, it's 2009, right? So they're all like, "No, we're dealing with our own stuff, and you're just a kid. You don't know what you're talking about." And till there was somebody. It's always the same story, right? No, 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 no. Yes, it's that grit and that resilience and that consistency, and obviously faith. So you have to, faith in something greater than yourself. Um, but during while you're going through it, obviously your whole body and everything that I think back at those feelings, your body's like vibrating, like, right? My mother-in-law's freaking out, my wife's freaking out. Um, but I would spend up to 11, 12 o'clock at night knocking on doors, doing whatever it took to collect that extra couple $100, and then negotiating. I went to law school, business school beforehand, right? So I had left everybody in New York and come to Florida because it's like, okay, this is where growth happens. But it was $38,000 an apartment. So in my mind, I'm just like basic math. I'm like, this is so cheap. It was showing it was losing $1 million, but I'm like, it can't be. All these expenses are not real. So you do the specific line item work of like income, expense, the collections, cutting the expenses. So I did that after we closed for like a year. And then we actually were able to make our business plan. After a few months, some profit came, and then we were able to refinance. From the refinance money, we were able to buy our next deal for 40,000 a unit. We stayed in that 40 to 50,000 kind of space during that time, 2010, 11, 12, those years. But my advice is nobody's going to do it for you. You eventually, everyone has to grow up, right? We can't sit there and give our energy to social media and all these things. Everyone has to do the action, have a plan, put pen to paper and have a plan. And then with that plan, you're not going to see it. And even close family and friends are going to tell you you can't do it. That's classic. You should expect that, actually. You should expect that that's actually going to happen, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to get out of your situation. So you've lived in a certain way, and everybody knows you in that way. Therefore, when you do something different, their first response is going to be doubt and fear, but it's from them, not you. So you have to get comfortable with unknown, if you want to call it that.
Moshe, I think it's a very inspirational journey that you've been on. And when you talk about going and having this deal and talking to 30 investors and having them all say no, dealing with their own situations until you finally got that one yes. You talked about going to the police and they're telling you this is a terrible area. You don't want to invest here. Get your money and get out. At that point, you were already committed to the deal. I'm trying to understand what gave you that conviction? And I get the situation with the employment and the job, but where did this fire come from? I mean, is this something that you've always had? Was this just simply a back against the wall scenario and this is the only path you could see out of it? Help us understand like what encouraged or what sparked this drive.
Yeah, I mean, when your back is up against the wall, for sure, you have to find within yourself places that you've never been or you don't want to go for that strength. And um and for me, it's like I wanted to take care of my family. So I'm just gonna make this work. You we don't see that so often nowadays, but that is the recipe. Every successful multimillionaire, billionaire, successful person, there's a in society, there's systems that are happening, things that are happening. And you don't naturally want to go out of those systems. But because they were forced, the way I kind of see it, they were forced to go out of their systems and pivot and see and forced to see something different. So it must have been very painful, but they were able to see something different. And in that glimpse, you can't unsee it. And when you see it, that actually becomes your greatest strength. Like I always think about, I see now, I'll be 45 in a few months, and I see my friends now that were kind of in the back of the class, right? They now are, uh, they couldn't get regular jobs because they were C students. But in reality, because they're survivors, in reality now, some of them building skyscrapers, they're doing crazy businesses, because that is what schools should be teaching. That again, that grit and that resilience of, okay, this system. Because if you stay, again, you want to be super successful in multifamily, let's just use that as an example. It's super hard if you believe that, if you give in to that, the established norm. So if you stay within normal, it's hard to say this. But what is the fact when you look at it? Normal equals, unfortunately, a lot of failure of what each of us want to desire, our highest potential, right? If we want to reach our highest potential, which is in alignment and feeling great and providing for the people we love, the established government, big corporations, things that we know, media, they don't actually provide for the everyday person. And that's the reason for your show. You want to give strength and value to the everyday person. So they got to start shifting how they think.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway there is you have to have the right mindset to just have that back against the wall and push through it. And that's probably the toughest time, right? Because
Yeah.
it's easy to be optimistic and, to look at building things when you have options. But when you are there and, rent's due or mortgage payments due and you got to take care of your family and you don't really have the means, how much can you hustle? And I love the quote you said, right? It's if your why is deep enough, the how won't matter. You'll figure it out. And it's a different mentality. And for those who are going through that situation now and maybe seeing opportunities or doors that could be open for them, but the how isn't as clear, listen to what Moshe is talking about because at the end of the day, you've got to take advantage. You've got to be able to do the hard work. You got to be willing to make the right investments and put it on the line, but be willing to put in the work, right? It's not just, hey, here's a tough deal. Let's see what happens and hopefully it works out. You made sure that you did everything you could to ensure that those deals would ultimately be successful. When you were going through that kind of analysis process, did you have like help? Like, did you have any training? Because this was like one of your earlier deals. Like, what gave you the confidence to say, you know what, I'm going to be able to make this work?
Uh, I kind of, I guess my mind is wired on math. I have, I guess I was diagnosed with dyslexia, so I have that. So I had to like kind of figure out my way, but my basic math. And by the way, everyone has to understand that in the nature of business, it's either a service or a good. And then, right? So the machine has to continue to run. So you got to make sure that conservatively you've done your numbers, which is everything is money comes in, income, expenses, money goes out, and down to your bottom line net income. And you again, you do it conservatively because if you don't have profit, if you don't have net income, at the end of the day, the machine shuts off and you're done. You're out of the game. Think of it as a game. You gotta you gotta hold it as precious. The cash flow, or you got to see where you're going to go, and you got to have plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G on literally. Oh yeah, the bank's going to give me a line of credit here, or I'm going to be able to get this done, or my uncle's gonna front this money. Most of the things that you think are going to happen don't come through, at least timely. That's just the rhythm of the world. It's just how it works. So I decided I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And I love that from Elon Musk. He says, if you decide to become an entrepreneur, it's like staring out into the light, eating glass, like on those. And right, if you want to be super, right, you want to be super successful. I think everybody should have a healthy self-esteem to want to provide for themselves and people they care about. There's nothing wrong with that. And we should all get out of that mindset. Oh, money's bad, or money's the root of all evil. Terrible, terrible. It's good. It does. It makes things go around. It makes freedom. It makes positive things. It's what you do with it. It's a tool. It's a tool.
Yeah, I love it. I want to talk about some of the work you're doing with money, but you started talking about the analysis part, right? And understanding the income and going line by line, looking at the expenses. You gave a quote that I love. You talked about when you're looking at the net profit, it's a game. And if you think about it from a gamifying standpoint, if you have negative profits, right, or you're losing money, you're going to be out of the game. And that's just the reality. And a lot of folks are dealing with that. But we can forecast that, hey, at some point in the future, this thing is going to be profitable or it's going to be worth a lot of money. I remember, a couple of years ago, I was talking to an investor, and their strategy was to buy these properties that had negative cash flow because they were completely in line or believes that the property will go up in value over the next 5 years. And this is out west. And I just was like, wow, that is a risky strategy to know your property has no pathway to cash flow and just assuming you're going to bank on appreciation, which is why it's so important to focus on what is that path to getting to cash flow. When you look at and talk to other investors, right? I'm sure folks come to you all the time and, you've been able to mentor other folks. What is the biggest mistake you see people making when it comes to analyzing these deals?
Well, it's two main ones. They don't have is a feel, is an intuition. Again, on the every line item of income, every line item of expense, they're too wide-eyed. They believe, right? They believe, oh yeah, we'll bring in 98% of revenue, or we'll slash all these expenses this way, and this is what it is, but they're not calculating for truth. That's a big thing. And brokers are excellent. They'll wear fancy suits, they'll sell you, they talk all the good words, all the words you want to hear, and they all sound the same, by the way. Eventually, you've been in this long enough, you're going to hear the same words, the same Ferragamo shoes, right? And the belt, right? And the smile. Um, Irrelevant. Throw it out the window. Nothing what they say. Assume every word they say is not true. Assume that. And you do what works for you moving forward. That includes, on the buy, increasing real estate taxes as an example. The other thing is people assume, oh, you talk about negative cash flow, but even worse than that, they buy land, right? Again, on that appreciation, or, oh, we're going to build 200 units, apartments here. And they didn't sit and speak to the city and all the power happy people, the manager at the city and the zoning, and what actually happens, and the burn rate of legal fees and engineering fees, et cetera, and impact fees, till you finally get it done. And going through 3 contractors after one has stolen from you and the other one didn't show up, et cetera. That's why I feel the tightest type of investment, at least in multifamily, is, yeah, something's broken, mismanagement, or a fund is closing, or there's something in special servicing or a debt fund. They don't have the integration in their company to manage that, and you get in to help manage it. And based on your economies of scale, that you can slow and steady add value and increase the net income, because that's the bottom line. That's what the capital markets, that's what investors, that's what banks care about, is down to that net income, true net income. That's where holding assets in America has the biggest value, right? And slowly increasing that, right? And then times 15, times 20, depending on where your cap rate is, on your exit or your refinance.
Yeah, I love it. What you talked about there was, one, make sure you understand what's really going on. Brokers, their job is to sell you a vision and an opportunity, right? But once you close, they have no accountability for what you have to deal with there. So make sure you understand your numbers. Make sure you understand what you're going to expect. One example there is on the taxes. Make sure you understand what the new taxes may be once you close on that deal. And then also focusing on just the net income, making sure that you are really tight with each line item, understanding what those numbers are, and locking in on the net income. That's going to give you the flexibility you need to really run your business. We've talked about multifamily, but you've done a lot of different asset classes. And the thing that you've done really well is identify distressed opportunities. The market cycle has shifted a little bit. Can you talk about how you, I guess, look for or evaluate both distressed opportunities, but also amongst the different asset classes based on what's going on in the economic landscape?
So I guess I'm, by now, or maybe I've been for a very long time, a contrarian investor. So if there's a lot of fear and a lot of doubt, and you're seeing in the newspapers a lot of issues, that I've trained my mind to be like, oh, ding, 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 possible opportunity. So the past year, I've bought several 100,000 square feet of office. Why? You're hearing the front page of the Wall Street Journal, everything during COVID, you know, nobody's going back to office, remote work. I'm not sure if you saw, there was a recording of Jamie Dimon, uh, and he was using some expletives, and he's like, everyone should go back to the office 5 days a week. And I also look at the nature of humans. The nature of humans, were social beings. Who's going to sit in their basement all day long? You know? Yeah, okay. If the real job of a company is, can you get people together in a social environment? Yeah, produce for the company, but they're happy. Can you do that? And if you keep thinking that way, and also mentorships and productivity, because how long, again, how you're going to be, and not everybody on a mass level is motivated every day to show up and get work product done. So from the leadership, there was a lot of frustration over the past 12 months. And so, especially, I'm seeing 1,000 people moving to Florida, uh, every day net, still now. And we have a very business friendly environment. Plus, the second Washington, D.C. is now Florida or Palm Beach, right? So, so for all these businesses, and I'm seeing I'm seeing opportunity because the big national funds, they don't want to know anything about office because they're the process and procedure of the logistics for banks, for institutional investors, for pension funds, they're very in the box a certain way. So they're just going to dump it. And again, price per pound. So I was able to pick up for 50 cents on the dollar from what they paid 10 years ago, some office products. So that's the also thing that's very important to keep in mind. What are you buying? Is there room for appreciation? I believe my math is always like this, kind of the back of the napkin is always that if it was this number once upon a time in real numbers, everything's a cycle on the macro level as far as the Federal Reserve and the interest rates. Eventually, it'll get back there. Might be a year, 2 years, 5 years, 7 years, cycles. And just hold. Don't kill the cash flow. Hold. And if all I do is get back to where it was a bunch of years ago, and I use some leverage, I've done pretty well.
Yeah, Dave, or said Dave, I'm sitting here looking at you, looking at the name there at the bottom. Moshe, I think that's just goes back to the fundamentals, right? I mean, you talk about buying at a discount, holding the asset long enough to get some appreciation and have some great cash flow throughout the whole period. It's a great sound strategy that works in any environment. I think the one key here and the one difference that people may not be thinking about is focusing on those assets that are out of favor. So right now, office is probably one of those asset classes. So looking there for opportunities. Multifamily is obviously going through some transitions as well. There might be a really nice opportunity to buy at a discount. So paying attention to where those opportunities are, but having more of a longer term view, that really reduces your risk and gives you some mitigation in that space there. For folks who want to learn more, they can check out your website, MoshePopack.com. We'll put a link to that in our show notes. I mentioned that some of the work you and your wife are doing, you guys are doing some phenomenal things. Can you just share a little bit about some of those top priorities and top projects you're working on now?
Yeah. So one of our favorite non-for-profit ventures that we created is called Neighborhood Farms USA. We're very proud of it. My wife, she was just very sensitive, and as a child, she would get sick all the time, and she figured she was able to get a healthy place by eating healthy food. Seems like a pretty simple idea. So a lot of our communities are in workforce housing communities, and there are non-edible, trees. And we said, you know what? Sunlight 300 days a year. Why don't we do kind of like after-school programs instead of the kids going out making trouble in these workforce housing communities where we have kind of two-story communities? We have all this landscape, and we create fruits and vegetables where the kids in the community could help plant. And they say that gardening is like the third highest thing that makes humans happy. Like going out and in nature and gardening, and we're seeing how happy the parents are, that the kids are busy, the kids are seeing the benefits of their hard work, and hopefully we're gonna expand. We're working to expand it nationwide as a great program to teach kids about nature and about healthy eating, in the environment. So we're really proud of that.
I love it. Neighborhood Farms USA. I'm sure we can find more information on your website, but I appreciate you sharing that. Sounds like a great initiative.
Thank
Right
you.
now, we're going to transition to our round of insights. They say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to grow as a multifamily investor, you have to spend more time with other multifamily investors. And an easy way to do that is to join our apartment investing mastermind group today. Just go to CasmonCapital.com and click on the mastermind button. Now, as a part of this group, you'll get access to expert trainings, group coaching calls, industry news and updates, as well as all of our webinars and workshops, including our 3-hour workshop on raising capital. Again, if you want to be around other multifamily investors that can help you scale your portfolio today and grow your network, make sure you're a part of the Apartment Investing Mastermind. Just go to CasmonCapital.com and click on the Mastermind button today. All right, give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
I would say I had to learn patience. I would have, I had a business plan on a particular building that I bought. I said, okay, this is cheap enough. This is near the hospital. It was in Vero Beach. And what happened? The hospital was bought by another conglomerate, and we were just in this lull space that we were going to have to sell possibly at a loss. And then one day the hospital gave us a call and they said, you know what, we need as much space as we can get. But it was only 3 years later. And it taught me that, again, what goes up comes down, what goes down comes up. If you can just be even keeled and be available, you don't know when that phone call will happen. So a seeming failure ended up being something great. And today we filled up the building. But I think for me, as just a general thing that I live by, looking back at all the things that happened to seemingly be the worst things that ever happened to me, ended up teaching me, if you're open to it, ended up being the best things that ever happened to me. So don't use your ego to judge stuff that's happening in the real world. Maybe it's a learning experience.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for our listeners.
I would say I use RealPage for all my management software. I like it. They're responsive. Not that I own any stock in that company, but I just like it. It's very versatile, and it really works for my multifamily management.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Well, it's the book that I mentioned on the show, and I give it out. It's Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. Why? Here's a man, after the Holocaust, he lost his pregnant wife and his parents. He lost his business. He lost everything that he knows, and he was in 4 concentration camps. And he writes this book afterwards, and he comes from a place of the only thing that we can control, which is takes specific thought, but from there, everything can happen, is our reaction to the things that happen. And I think that that's really how I think about things. Realize that we don't control anything, and but we can, when things happen, we can choose our reaction. So I think it's brilliant.
Love it. Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
For sure, and I'm getting more and more into it, and I talked about it on my show yesterday. Meditation, for sure. Why? Because it allows you to create a whole world in your mind where you can pull from when you need strength. So it gives you clarity, and you don't need to seek outside validation or things like that. You just, you're able to find that within you.
Give me your number one insight for finding distressed investment opportunities.
I think it's what I told my son the other day. Don't even hear the word no. Obviously, you go to special asset divisions, you go to bankruptcies and things like that, and find the decision makers. They'll say no, it's irrelevant to you. Don't even get emotional about that. I know one of my best deals, literally, I called the guy, people told me he's nuts. I called him, he cursed me out literally every day, and I called him and I was nice to him each day. And after a year, he had a dispute with a partner. He said, if you do X, Y, and Z, I'll sell you the property. I said, no problem. I didn't negotiate him. And we remained friends after that. And so, no, in everything in life, but specifically looking, and if you do what you say, don't ever retrade. the people that are working with distress, they just obviously they're selling it to you at a discount. They just want it off the books. You said something, you keep your word. Don't retrade anything. Do it.
Great advice there. Let's go in a different direction. You're in South Florida. Give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
I would say, just because it's clean and good and reliable, is a Greek place called Milos. It's down in south of Fifth. They have a few places all over the world. Great fish, great salad, just nice.
Sounds like a great option there. You gave us a lot of great stuff. When I listened to your story, you were in corporate America, had that job, got let go, 3 kids, 29 years old, back against the wall. You go all in on real estate, hustling hard, talking to as many people as you can, took 30 no's to get some investors to finally believe in your vision and support you. And the focus on analyzing the line items, right? The income line items one by one, the expense line items one by one, and focusing on that net income. With the net income that's positive, you can control the deal. And as you talked about, real estate's all cyclical. So if it was, worth more in the past, it will likely at some point be worth more in the future. You just have to make sure you're in a position to hold that asset long enough. I appreciate your other tips on finding distressed assets and just really making sure that you are persistent and having the right mindset and attitude. And I think that's the biggest takeaway is having that back against the wall, have the right mindset, train yourself to be in a position where you can make something happen no matter what's going on around you and no matter what you're hearing from the outside world. Again, folks who want to learn more, they can check out your website, MoshePopack.com. We will link to that in the show notes. Moshe, thanks again for being a great guest and coming on Multifamily Insights. We look forward to staying in touch with you, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much, Sean. It's really been a pleasure.